Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to today's presentation, which is testing household products. So specifically today, we're going to be looking at anything that's to do with the household, so things like cleaning products, anything to do with electrical appliances that you might use in your home, that kind of thing basically. So a lot of it is based on claims as usual, because obviously that's what we do. I'll just go to the agenda. So a lot of it will be based on claims as usual, but also looking at how you test household products and the other reasons you may test them, because household products are one of those kind of categories that aren't necessarily the same when we're looking at things like cosmetics and food and things like that, because it's more about the efficacy of the product. Does it actually work, rather than making claims about it that will, I don't know, maybe kind of show off the benefits a bit more. So this webinar is being recorded, and there'll also be a chance for a Q&A at the end. So if you've got any questions as we go through, there is a little Q&A button on your screen, and feel free to make a note of any questions. So basically, a summary of the agenda. I'll be looking at the household products market. I'll be talking about how to ensure your product stands out in the market. So looking at those claims as mentioned earlier. I'll also be giving you a summary of consumer research. That's what we conduct at 18 Global Research, and also choosing the appropriate study design and methodology. So I'll share some case studies to show you about that as well. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm the Regulatory Director at 18 Global Research. So my specialism is anything to do with regulations surrounding advertising, but sorry, my cat's attacking my computer. Anything to do with surrounding advertising, and any of the products that we test as well. So we want to make sure that the data we're providing is regulatory compliant for our clients in the territories that they're looking to sell their products. So as you can see, I've worked with a huge range of clients, over 250 clients in total, to direct design studies, and basically make sure that our studies are designed and people are able to use their data, whether that's household goods or any other FMCG category. So my real specialism now is about regulation, and I like to give talks like this on anything that I can help with and anything I know. So just to kind of start off and give us a bit of a summary of what we're talking about today, I want to talk about the global household products market. So as mentioned, when you look up household products, you are mainly looking, sorry about my cat, you are mainly looking at things like household cleaning. So that could be anything from sort of toilet cleaners all the way to antibacterial in the kitchen. It could be things like toilet paper. That's something we don't often talk about, but it's tested a lot. Household tissues, that kind of thing, really. But when we look at the market, it's humongous. So at the moment, there is obviously a growing emphasis for people keeping a clean and hygienic household. And the estimated growth is going to be over 312 billion US dollars by 2027. Sorry, right, I'm going to move my cat. So basically, that's all to do with the household cleaning sort of market. There's also kind of key market innovators to be aware of. So that includes people like Colgate, Palmolive, Procter & Gamble, Henkel, and they're basically really driving innovation within this factor, which is another reason why we're really seeing a growth in it. There's also kind of, just to kind of point out, really big markets in Asia Pacific and Latin America, but they're really not looking at branded products compared to a lot of other countries. They're much more looking at sort of cheap availability, cheap substitutes. So a lot of those kind of branded products don't really grow there because people are just looking at the kind of cheapest options. So it's always something to consider as well, especially when it comes to household cleaning products. Cost is always a big thing. It's one of those sort of industries that people don't tend to want to spend as much money on. It's more of a necessity rather than a luxury. So what's the impact of COVID-19, which is obviously what I'm talking about a lot in all my lectures. It's really important to talk about right now. And especially the household products market is really seeing an impact from COVID-19. But whereas a lot of other industries are seeing a negative impact, household cleaning is really seeing a positive one in terms of the fact that everyone needs to buy household cleaning products. So we saw a real surge right at the beginning. So I've got an article from April there. There was a real surge in any affected country because people were obviously wanting to disinfect everything. Mintel have also done a article about it as well. And they said that it's something that we're looking at a recession again, basically, especially in the UK in particular, which, funny enough, the household cleaning products in the last recession in 2012 did really badly because people kind of saw that as a place to drop back and not spend as much money, and it didn't see a positive growth. Oh, sorry, it didn't see positive growth until 2012. Whereas with COVID-19, it's the one, it's sort of like, as I was saying, kind of industry that's actually doing really, really well off it, because people are much more concerned about being clean, basically. Trying to think of the right word there. So there's a huge surge in the market. So basically, my overall takeaway from this is it's a huge market to be in anyway. It's continuously growing, but also, especially to do with what's going on in the world right now, it's definitely a time to be thinking about household cleaning products. So to start off, I just wanted to look at some kind of advertising claims that you see on these types of products. So things like sort of non-bio laundry detergent from Persil. So the kind of claims they're looking at are things that being tough on stains, removing those tough stains, but also being gentle to sensitive skin. So it's not just about the product performance itself, but how the user's experience using that product is really, really important. Also, they have things about, how many washes it can take and, what the ingredients are, which is what you see, again, a lot more in household products, possibly compared to other industries, is what, what people get out of it, how many uses, and also, what's it made out of? Why should I purchase it? What's good about the ingredients there? Toilet tissue, so generally it's mainly about being soft. So people were much more concerned about the softness of it, and also dermatologically tested, because people are using it on their skin. Even though it's a household product and not like a personal care product, it's really important there's some kind of testing there. So Flash, again, so this is my example of a antibacterial, as I was saying earlier, and this is where you see what we call kill claims. So things like 99.9% of bacteria, any antibacterial kind of product, you need to see those kinds of claims on there. That's really important. As well as, sort of saying what it will remove and sparkling clean, things like that as their claims. Also interesting to sort of look at our appliances as well and things like that. So there's a steam cleaner, floor steam cleaner. And again, we're looking at the bacteria. That's really important, but also about it being easy to use. So that's another thing, is people really want to look at convenience in this kind of sector. So who regulates these claims? I'm sure if you've watched my webinars, you'll know, or if you work in the industry already, but I think it's really important, before we kind of talk about the claims and how it elevates your marketing, to talk about the regulation and think who's actually going to be monitoring this and who's going to be looking at my claims. So most countries have ad self-regulatory organization, which regulates ads in their own country. Basically what they're doing is trying to make sure that the industry is actively regulating itself. So no government intervention. People should be kind of doing it themselves, knowing what the code of conduct is, to make sure that adverts are legal, decent, honest, and truthful. So nothing misleading. When we see those 99.9% of bacteria kill claims, we don't want to just make that up. There needs to be some kind of evidence behind it. It needs to be really honest. So it's ad self-regulation. So the idea is instead of having a government body come in and sort of say police all the adverts that are on the market, people should be aware of the advertising code of conduct. They should be adopting them in their advertising. And what happens is it's all built in on a complaints basis then. So instead of having someone kind of go around and check all the adverts and make sure there's the evidence there, people complain about adverts. So basically, it can either be a consumer or a competitor, but they'll go to the advertising self-regulation organization in that country, and they will say, either if it's a consumer, they'll be like, I bought this product. Maybe it's a wipe that says, I don't know, state smear free or something like that. And they go, actually, it smeared everything. I don't think that that's a claim that's been substantiated. They might complain to the advertising standards, and it might also be your competitor. And this is always quite interesting, especially when it comes to things like removing a certain amount of bacteria or something like that. If one of your competitors had only got, say, 90%, and you come out and say 91%, they might question whether that's genuine because they haven't been able to get that claim themselves. So that's usually how it works with competitors, is if they don't feel like they've managed to achieve that, they might question if you have as well. And it's the same for you. If you've got competitors out there and you believe that your formulation should be as good, but they've got better claims, you can also complain to these advertising standards. So it just basically means that once you complain, the advertising standards can look into it for you and find out if there's any evidence behind those claims. So as I said, most countries work on this basis. Almost every country has a self-regulatory organisation. So no matter where you're selling or making your products, please do look that up and see what their code of conduct is as well, because there are lots of other parts of the advertising codes that are really important to be familiar with before you start advertising your products. And in terms of that, as I've put there, there's three parts of that industry: the advertisers who pay for the advertising agencies responsible for its form and content, and the media that carry it. So if any of those three parts speak to you, so generally, if you are if you make the product yourself and you're making those adverts, if you're a distributor of other people's products, if you're a retailer, you need to be aware of these codes of conduct because it will affect you. So a little kind of sort of takeaway for you. I've put a couple of links there. There's the International Chamber of Commerce, the ICC, and they have a regulatory framework which countries can adopt. So that's adopted in about 52 different countries, and it's a really good starting point if you're not sure about what the SROs are in your country. You can have a little look on there and see if your country's adopted that code and go from there. It's the same with ICAS, which is the International Council of Ad Self-Regulation. So I've put a link to them there as well. So they're basically a council of all advertising standards that have come together. It started off with the European Advertising Standards Alliance, and it's a global organization now. So I find that really helpful because if I know there's a country I'm looking at to place a study and I want to make sure the claims that we're trying to substantiate are compliant in that territory, I'll look at ICAS first. Because they have a list of all the members there, so I can see if that country's a member. And I'm really familiar with ICAS and their kind of shared code of conduct. So although each country is different, for example, ICAS, anyone who's a member of ICAS, I know that they, say that you need independent verifiable evidence, which is what we produce as well. So yeah, so kind of like takeaway there. It's a lot of information I know in one slide, but I just wanted to touch on it today, just to kind of, like I say, give you a takeaway of where you need to be looking before you place your adverts. So in terms of house products in particular, we've looked at the claims that are on the products themselves. Something that we see really commonly in household products, whether we're looking at the claims in advertising or just for internal information, is comparison testing. So to give you kind of some background about comparison testing, or comparison claims in particular, I've taken the ASA summary because it's a really good starting point. So that's the Advertising Standards Alliance in the UK, where I'm based, which is really similar to a lot of other countries because they're part of ICAS. So as I said, they all kind of share those same code of conducts. So as summarized by the ASA, basically comparisons is either to compare the quality, so something's better than something, to say a price, so it's cheaper, so that's what you often see in supermarkets and things like that. Performance, it goes faster, or it's market share, so it's the best selling product. So not all comparisons will fall into that, but that's a really good starting point to think about, is my claim, do I want to make a claim that kind of falls into those categories? Sometimes you're looking at comparing with a competitor, but sometimes you're also looking at comparing with your own product. So things like new and improved formula, that can be a common claim that we see. And that's actually to do with your own products. Be really careful about claims is a really good kind of point that they brought up. I thought I'd really like to mention it. Anything that is superlative. So anything that says best, leading, cheapest, because you might have to compare with the entire world, the entire market of competitors, which can be incredibly hard to substantiate. So I had a client ask me the other day, it was actually not about household products, but it was still fall into it. It was for a nail varnish, and they said they wanted to say it dries 2 times faster. And I questioned it because I said it was obviously, are you trying to say 2 times faster than every single nail varnish? Because that could be hard to prove. What we could do is say, just, look at the average amount of time it takes for a nail varnish to dry and try and beat that. So there's all these kinds of things that you need to think about. Always be really, really careful about making anything that is the biggest claim ever, because you will need so much data to substantiate that, and it could be unfeasible. Just kind of a note as well, while talking about those advertising standards and those regulations. Obviously, at this time, COVID-19 time, global pandemic, it's really important to consider making sure that we're still abiding by the advertising code of conduct and not kind of going off piece with our advertising. So what I mean by that is we've seen it, maybe not so much now, but certainly at the beginning of the pandemic, where people were using essentially the public's fear to drive more sales. So things like, I don't know, it could be an antibacterial spray and they say use this to protect you against COVID-19. Well, it won't necessarily protect you. There's nothing to say it was because, your chances are better if you're clean, but you can't say using this product will protect you. It's not fair. And it's not fair on the market. It's not fair on your competitors. And it's also not fair on your consumer. So it's basically a note to say, use the COVID-19 thing to your advantage, as harsh as that sounds, with the household products, because like I said, it's a great time to be selling household products. People do need bleach, but don't make claims about it protecting you or anything like that against COVID-19, because that won't be fair. So to move on to what we do and start talking about how we substantiate these claims, I want to talk about consumer research, because that is what we conduct. So consumer research is basically perception studies. So anything that a consumer can perceive themselves, usually while assessing the product at home. So usually we do in-home studies. People are sent products to test at home and answer an online questionnaire about their experience, or several online questionnaires depending. So basically it's anything they can assess themselves. So something like a bacteria claim, 99.9% of bacteria, we would be able to substantiate for a consumer study, because there's nowhere a consumer could say, yes, that has killed that much. But what they can do is things like, leaves my surfaces sparkling clean. That's the kind of claim we can look at. It's easy to use. It's more effective than this brand. This is the kind of claims we'll be looking at for household products. And just generally, would they like the product? What's their acceptability of it? So it reflects the actual conditions of the product in use. So comparatively, if you were, sort of testing in a lab and saying, I've developed this antibacterial wipe, we can see it wipes here. Yeah, that's fine. We've kind of tested it ourselves. It doesn't really reflect how people were going to use that product on the market. I used a wipe the other day that basically I was using to clean my bathroom, and it just ripped straight away because it was biodegradable, which I wanted. I wanted something biodegradable. But I kind of thought, if this had been put on a consumer study, which it probably hadn't, I felt, maybe it wouldn't have ripped immediately. Maybe people would have noted that and said it wasn't very strong, and they could have looked at developing it a bit better. So it's that kind of feedback that you really need. It means that your sales won't be damaged by kind of bad experiences, because you'll get that feedback from the get-go, which is really, really helpful. So as I've said, people would tend to compare household products. It's it's the most common comparison that I see compared to any other industry, because you might have your, different formulations you want to test out. So as I said, with the wipe study, maybe you might have a few different wipes and you want to get them tested in actual use to say which one's the strongest. You might want to make claims against your competitors. And also you might just want to check, check where you sit within your market. You benchmark yourself against your competitors. If you work for a supermarket, for example, and you had something like an essentials range and a luxury range, is that worth comparing and making sure that the luxury range is more effective than the essentials range? There's a lot that you can think about when it comes to household products. So for some claims, you may need additional evidence. This is where I was talking about, mainly with household cleaning, you'll be looking at things like those kill claims. So obviously you'll need to make sure you have that. Most of that will be driven from your raw ingredients. So when you formulate the product, a lot of raw ingredients will be supplied with those kinds of claims with them. So with household, we kind of see more from the ingredients, how it's driven, because there's a lot of evidence behind, so for example, bleach, we know it kills bacteria, that kind of thing. So why are we conducting consumer research? Just some notes to think about. So kind of drive it, not just about claims, but as I mentioned, this webinar is also about making your product stand out against your competitors, and this kind of thing. So really think of consumer research as a tool to help you get everything you need to be able to do that. So obviously substantiate your claims. New product development is really important. So as I said earlier, maybe to test some different formulations, or just to find out as you're developing it, do people enjoy the experience of this product before we go into a huge launch? Product and brand perceptions. So it could be obviously the product perception itself. Do people enjoy using it? But also think about the brand. Think about your branding as well. Does it stand out to those consumers? Do they want to buy it because of the brand? Is there anything off-putting about it, about the name, about the colors, this kinds of thing? And as I put on there as well, packaging design comes under that. Benchmark testing, I very much discussed, but there's also reformulation. So as I said, anything that the consumers can compare, that's a great way of using consumer research. Investigating new markets is huge. So as I was talking about earlier, things like the Asia Pacific and the Latin markets tend to care more about cost. So, test your products there, find out how much they would pay for it if that's where you want to sell your products. Gain testimonials and reviews. To gain testimonials and reviews. So see what people will say about the product and the experience of using it themselves. This is great for your marketing to have those kind of user experiences really detailed, as well as the kind of quantitative research you'll get from doing the study. And obviously, like I said earlier, about establishing those price points. So how much do people pay for these products after testing them? Kind of reveal that brand at the end maybe, and say, now you know about the brand, would you pay so much for the product? It's really good feedback to get. So I just want to talk about a case study, as I mentioned, just to kind of give you an overall about how we test these kinds of products and the data that you get at the end of it, to be able to look at those claims. So this test in particular was for a laundry detergent, and it's for a leading manufacturer of household goods. So all the product tests they do with us are all household products, cleaning and things like that. But they want to test 4 leading brands of laundry detergent against one another to determine the ink transfer of the laundry capsule. So basically they're looking at developing these brands, and they want to make sure that none of them transfer ink, but they also want to get some overall feedback about the perception of the brands as well, without branding. So the comparison study is blind. So they don't know who the brand is or anything like that. So while it's blind, we want to make sure, which is the best formulation, which formulation do we want to carry forward? Because they're developing these leading brands. So they want to know, which ones they can kind of sell really well to those brands. The study was conducted in the UK and France, as these are the final intended product markets for the product. Something really important. Basically, when I usually talk about intended markets for a product, we often say the product should be tested in the market that you're intending to sell it, mainly because of the efficacy of the product. So, for example, when I'm looking at skincare, I wouldn't want to test a skincare product somewhere humid and then sell it in the UK where it's not humid, for example. Whereas with household products, it probably isn't as affecting in terms of climate or anything like that, of how the product performs. But it is really important to think about how the product is accepted by that market. So like I said, if the UK and France is where you want to sell the product, do the people in the UK and France like the product, for a start? So basically, we're looking at the overall formulation, which one's the winning formulation, but do they transfer ink? And if so, which one's the best for not transferring ink? So really important sort of things we're looking at with this in particular study. Just to kind of put out there the legislation. So as I mentioned earlier, that obviously, as I mentioned earlier, we've got those advertising regulations. They have a code of conduct. I now want to make that more specific to this study in particular. So we're looking at comparisons and comparison claims. So basically more complex comparisons, such as between the efficiency of products, so this is what we're looking at here, involve a large amount of quite technical evidence. So this is our evidence. It's very technical because we're sending out these products. There is, I will show you in a minute, a statistical difference between the products. So we can't just say, yes, this one's better, it was rated higher. We have to prove there's a statistical significant difference, and that's really good evidence to have behind these claims. So we need to make sure that also the ad doesn't mislead the consumers. So we have got that information on our advert as well. So if you are to use that evidence then and say, this is better than that product, you need to make that really clear to your consumer what that evidence is. So it'd be in a consumer test with however many 100 people, this one was rated best. So just a little breakdown of what the protocol was for this. So what was the study design? Obviously, we're testing in the France and UK. It was a quadruple placement. We've got 4 products, and they're testing the products. It's an even rotation product distribution. What does this mean? basically it means that the consumers all receive all 4 of the products, but we rotate who is answering the questionnaire and when. So for example, group A will test product A first, group B will test product B first, C first, D first. It then rotates. It's very complex, but it's a really effective way of doing a comparison like this, because the consumers are all comparing it themselves. So instead of having, it's called a sequential monadic test, basically. So a monadic test is where consumers will just receive one product and test it, and then we'll compare the data. In this case, they're getting all the products and they're testing it themselves. So it's the same person with the same opinions, making it the most direct comparison that you can make. So it's really good for household products. So that's what we're doing, but we're keeping it fair as well, because we don't want to have, if everyone tested A first, by the time they tested D first, they might kind of all go, oh, well, it's just the same as the others. So it's really important that we have each product tested at a different time, so we don't have any of that fatigue of testing the products, basically. So yes, that's kind of like what the justification is there for that kind of study design. And as I mentioned, it's best for these kinds of products. 4 is quite a lot to test. It's probably the maximum. If you're looking at comparing 8 products, I wouldn't say we'd have one consumer test each one, because as I said, by the time they test the 8th product, they're just going to be sick of answering the same questions about these products. So we can always help anyway with the study design for this kind of thing. It's a 14-day study, so we just had them use it for a couple of days because it's a wash. You know, they just chucked it in the wash, and once it had been washed, then yeah, they could kind of review the product. We provided them with plain white t-shirts for them to do this. As I said, it's an ink transfer test. Firstly, we want to make sure that no one's clothes were ruined in case the ink transfer did transfer. But also we want them all to have the same basis. So plain white t-shirts, we know that it's a direct comparison again. So yeah, we had 50-50 in the UK and France, and obviously they had to own a washing machine because otherwise they weren't going to be able to test the product. So these are the results that we gained from this product test. So firstly, we're just going to look at the percentages of people satisfied. So this is taken directly from our reporting. You get a summary report of percentages. So we've got the overall performance of the capsule is the question that I've chosen out of our report to look at. As you can see, it's the same question for A, B, C, and D. That's our products. We've got the number of people that said they were satisfied. The number of people said that they had a neutral response, I didn't really know. And the number of people that are not satisfied. And then we've got the percentages of people that are satisfied, neutral, and not satisfied. So this is what we usually use for claims as well. So as you can see, they've got a little asterisk next to the percentages. So anything basically that achieves more than 66% in this case, you can set your own pass marks, but we set 66% as our generic pass mark. Anything that's past that will get an asterisk, and you can use it in your advertising because the statistical majority of the participants have agreed that they are satisfied with the performance of the product. And that's the rate, same for any claim that you kind of had going through there. So this is the people that have said that they're satisfied. So as you can see, product B is the winner. We've got 91%, and product A is the loser because it's got 88%. But is this the winner or loser? So as I said earlier about having really technical evidence, can we say that product B is the winner? So let's break it down a bit more. So now we're looking at this question again, the overall performance of the capsule. And this all looks very technical, I know, but bear with me. We're looking at a 2-way and over test and a 2-key test. So the 2-key test is what we want to look at to see if there's a significant difference between the products. So I said 91% and 88%. 91% is clearly our winner. But now we look at the mean averages and what the standard deviation is between the results. And our 2-key test says that the products must differ by more than 0.14 for us to have a significant difference between the products. So this is really important for us to know. So obviously, is there going to be a significant difference between these products? And we can see that there is no significant difference between these products because they do not differ by more than 0.1. that's our highest differentiation between these products, there's no significant difference. So even though our sample, got the 91% as the highest percentage, there's no significant difference between any of the products whatsoever. So we can't say that one of them is a winner. We can say that they perform equally as well as one another. So that's really good. We've still taken something from it. As you see, we had a nice large panel on this. We had 189 participants. This is really important because if we had less participants, it's even harder to say this. So it's harder to tell a difference in the first place because basically the smaller the number of participants, the bigger the possibility of people, rating it a certain way. So we can't say, if we perform this test again, would it be that same result, essentially? So 189 is a really good amount. And it also means we've got enough data to say that they're as good as each other as well, because it's the same either way. If we had a small panel and we couldn't tell if there's a difference, we also wouldn't be able to say they're as good as each other either, because there's just not enough data behind it. I hope that all makes sense. I know it's very technical, but this is basically how we work it out. So also we want to look at the other side of it. What happens if you don't have those claims substantiated or any of your adverts get picked up on? So as I said earlier, the Advertising Standards Authority is the authority in the UK. I think I said Alliance earlier, so it's definitely authority. It's the Advertising Standards Authority in the UK. And this is a couple of their rulings, which are always quite interesting to see what's been withdrawn. So one of them was about making a old penny as good as new in 15 seconds, which I don't think people are really that worried about cleaning pennies, but obviously they are. And people had tried it at home and it hadn't worked. So obviously the advert is misleading because it was as I said, it was a demonstration for sinks and taps, but it was just oversimplified and misleading is what the ASA came back and said. So they had to withdraw that advert. And the Dyson ads as well had to be banned for misleading claims. They basically did a comparison with another vacuum and said it was better than the other. But basically there wasn't enough data behind it to say that it was something like a 10 times better suction or something like that. But obviously there's no data behind it to say that, or not enough data behind it to say that. So they had to withdraw the advert. The most important thing about this is I just want to show you these because, as you can see, these are screenshots from newspapers. So this is what people have published about these misleading adverts. So they've, this is something that's gone into the news. You don't really want your brand to be shown in the news like this. It doesn't look good, and it can really tarnish your reputation, basically. So it's just something really important to think about before you go out and put claims out without substantiation. So I talked a lot about what we do, but I also want to just talk about why to choose us before I go to question and answer. So just to touch on it all really briefly, we're an award-winning research agency. We are fully compliant with the GDPR. So obviously we've got an ISO 27001 to prove that and to show that we get audited on it as well. It's really important because we've got a database of over 600,000 volunteers worldwide. So we need to make sure we're protecting their data, but also protecting your data as well as our clients. We have unstable event reporting, which is made in accordance with the Cosmetic Vigilance Act. As I mentioned earlier, this is important for household cleaning because often, things like laundry detergent, it goes on people's skin. So people need to be able to report if they've had an adverse reaction to these products as well. So we've got, I've got a hand raised. We're about to go to question and answer, so I will help you after. So we've got an ISO 9001 as well, which is to do with our quality assurance. We're a partner to the Market Research Society, so you know that our research is done in a quality and ethical way as well. We can help with bespoke regulatory advice, and you get a designated study manager who will be your one point of contact throughout your study process and will get to know everything about you inside and out, as well as your research objectives. So just a few FAQs before I go to the question and answer, because these are sort of things that I get asked quite often. So I basically suggest a panel size starting at 100 responses. It does depend on the study details. It depends on the claims you want to make. It depends on the product. It depends on your markets. But it's just a really good starting point for people to think about. If you're kind of thinking, I've never done a product test before, how many samples have I got to prepare? The 100 responses is kind of the good target to think about. I thought to mention we've got product liability insurance, and that's really important to ensure that we're insured to conduct studies basically across the globe. And you need to make sure that you let your product liability insurance provider know as well that you're conducting consumer studies. Samples need to have been safety tested. This would be important for something like those dermatological claims, because we don't substantiate those in-house. With the step after that, you need to make sure that you have your safety test for things like laundry detergent before they're sent to our consumers to avoid undesirable events. Samples should be debranded. I've touched on this earlier. It's really important, particularly with comparison claims, to make sure the data is very fair. We can help with questionnaire design. So if you need to have questionnaires to support your claims, it's really good to get advice from us to make sure it's all done with our MRS training in mind. To make sure that we can support your claims basically. Now, I know there's a few questions coming in, so I won't delay any further and I'll start answering those for you. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box and I'll be happy to answer. So the first question I've got, where can I find specific rules for advertising related to COVID-19 claims? Is it allowed? For example, Reckitt Benckiser have a Dettol aerosol disinfectant spray in the UAE that has a claim, kills cold and flu viruses, coronavirus, and some other viruses as well. So if you're in the UAE, the best place to look at, in particular for advertising claims, is the Advertising Business Group. So they are the self-regulatory organisation in the UAE. There's also the National Media Council as well. So generally, as I said, you can make claims about COVID-19 as long as they are in accordance with those with the code of conduct. So as long as the code of conduct in the UAE means that you can make those kinds of claims, you can do that. So a lot of, I don't really see it so much in the UK, but I do know a lot of countries that you pick out particular illnesses or diseases and say that they can kill them. As long as there's the evidence behind it, I'm sure that it's absolutely fine, but worth checking. And as I said earlier, the Advertising Business Group is one of those complaint spaces. If you feel like you read their code of conduct and actually they shouldn't be able to say that, you can complain about it as well. Worth checking. And you can also contact the ABG and they'll be able to help you as well if you're not sure. So is it more effective to use sequential monadic testing for detergents or the direct comparison test, which has the most statistical significance? So direct comparison is really good, to be honest, for most products. When it comes to cleaning, you can probably do a direct comparison really easily. So like I said, wash one top, wash the other top, look at them, which one looks best. But as I said, because we were looking at multiple products, that's when you would have the sequential, because obviously you can only really assess one product at a time. It always depends on the product, to be honest. You can always reach out to us if you're thinking about that kind of product. Think about that kind of test. And let us know what your product is, what you want to compare, and we'll be able to give you the best study design around that. Because really, it's so hard to pin down and say which one is better. It always depends on, it's always on a case-by-case basis, basically. So do you know of any good recommended software that can assist in the panel and questionnaire? So obviously we have our own software for the whole study process. In terms of panel, I just kind of a bit more information there maybe. But in terms of the panel, if you're thinking of who your panel is, always think about your key markets, reflect your key markets and your key demographic, who you want to buy your products, and that's who your panel should be. But for our panel, it's all built in. Oh God, just come cat on my carrot screen. For our panel, it's all built in. So you just let us know who you need, and we recruit the panel that we have on our database already to reflect that. So it's just a case of who do you need on the study, and that's who we'll recruit. For the questionnaire, again, we just have a template basis that we use based on our MRS training. So we can just assist with that kind of questionnaire design. So there's not kind of a software that I'd say to use, because obviously we use our internal software and that's how we do it. And all our reporting is built in that as well. So if you want to, if you've got anything specific in mind, please feel free to write another question. I hope I've answered that. I've got no more questions coming right now, but I will give it a second in case someone's got any burning questions, and see what comes up. But if not, I'll close up the webinar. So I'll wait a few seconds. I'm going to send this recording out after, which will have my contact information on there. So if you've got any questions in mind that maybe aren't right now, but you think of them after, yeah, please let me know and I'll be happy to answer those as well. Cool. I don't think there's any more questions coming in, so I will finish up the webinar. So just to finish off, before I finish, oh, there's one more thing coming through the chat. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So the SCS have got a distance learning course on the essentials of cosmetic science. I know a lot of you might not be cosmetics based, but if you are, it's a really interesting course, and it's all distance learning. So it doesn't matter where you're based in the world, you can do that from the comfort of your own home. There's the IFSCC Congress as well, which is in London in September 2022, and you can register your interest to that now as well. So just to finish up, there's my contact information. But as I said, I will be sending up a follow-up as well and have that for you. Thank you so much for listening and for your interesting questions. As mentioned, please feel free to contact me if you have any further questions, and have an excellent rest of your day. Thank you.